The Indianapolis 500 is a hard race to win once, let alone 4 times. A.J. Foyt became the first person to do this and is one of only 3 people to do so. Anthony Joseph Foyt Jr. was born on January 16, 1935 in Houston, Texas. His father, who went by Tony, was a racing mechanic. Foyt got his first racing experience in midget cars. When he was just 5 years old, he drove in a midget race against local driver Doc Causey at the Houston Speed Bowl. Foyt would win. Foyt continued to race both midgets and sprint cars. In the process, he caught the attention of various owners in the USAC National Championship, what is today known as IndyCar. Foyt would make his IndyCar debut at the 1957 Springfield 100 at the Illinois State Fairgrounds. He would drive a Templeton Offenhauser owned by John Wills. In his debut, Foyt qualified 16th and finished 9th, 1 lap down. Foyt started 3 more races that season and got a best finish of 7th at the season-ending Bobby Ball Memorial. For 1958, Foyt was hired by Al Dean, who had won 3 of the previous 4 championships with Jimmy Bryan. Foyt would arrive at the Indianapolis 500 for the first time as a driver that year. However, the people responsible for letting drivers in the garage area did not believe that Foyt was driving for Dean, meaning Foyt was not allowed in the garage area until the car arrived. Foyt would move past this to qualify in 12th place. However, on the first lap of the race, Foyt would be collected in a crash that started when Dick Rathman and Ed Aletian were battling for the lead in turn 3. Tragically, Pat O'Connor was killed in the accident. Foyt would be able to continue on and was holding his own when he spun out after 148 laps. Foyt stayed with Dean through 1959 and got a best finish of 2nd twice. This would cause him to move over to the Bignotti-Bose Racing Associates team, which was a joint venture between mechanic George Bignotti and businessman Bob Bose. Foyt responded by picking up his first IndyCar win at the 1960 Ted Horn Memorial at the DuQuoin State Fairgrounds. Foyt picked up 3 more wins that season and would be the national champion after battling with Roger Ward. He would also win the USAC Eastern Sprint Car Championship that season. The following year, Foyt qualified 7th at Indianapolis and found himself battling with Eddie Sachs late in the race. However, Foyt's team failed to get much fuel in the car on what would have been his final pit stop. As a result, he had to pit again on lap 184, giving the lead back to Sachs. Sachs himself would pit with 3 laps to go to replace a worn tire, as his tires wore more quickly when he was trying to stay with the lighter Foyt car. It would be Foyt's first Indianapolis 500 win.
A.J. Foyt takes the lead from Eddie Sachs to the south third. Here comes the checkered flag. Bill Vanderwater is getting set to wave it, and he is going to wave it now. He does for A.J. Foyt, winner of the Golden Anniversary 500-mile race.
Foyt would successfully defend his national championship with 3 other wins that year. Despite the success they were having, Bose and Bignotti split up during the 1962 season. Foyt would follow Bignotti first to Lindsey Hopkins' team and eventually to Ansted Thompson Racing. The partnership with the latter would immediately reap benefits as Foyt won his debut race with them, the Golden State 100. After being national champion in 1963, rear engine cars began to appear in greater numbers the following year. Foyt decided to stay with a front-engine Watson 63 Offenhauser after he was unable to arrange a deal with Team Lotus to use their 3rd car. In the race, Bobby Marshman moved into the lead in his Lotus. However, he retired after 39 laps due to a spark plug failure. Jim Clark then took the lead, but his suspension failed on lap 48. Parnelli Jones, who was also in a front-engine car, became the leader, but when he and Foyt pitted on lap 55, the car caught fire. Foyt led the final 135 laps on his way to victory and would be the final 500 win for a front-engine car.
For A.J. Foyt, with the right hand up in the air, waving to the crowd, the winner of the 1964 500-mile race.
However, the race was largely overshadowed by a crash on the 2nd lap that claimed the lives of Eddie Sachs and Dave McDonald. In all, Foyt won 10 of 13 races that season and easily won the national championship. That same year, Foyt picked up his first NASCAR Cup Series win when he won the Firecracker 400. 1965 started off on a low note when Foyt had a violent crash in the Motor Trend 500 at Riverside International Raceway, where he was thought to have been killed. For somebody who was thought to have been killed at the beginning of the year, Foyt recovered nicely. He won 5 IndyCar races and ended up second in the points standings to a second-year driver named Mario Andretti. 1965 would also be Foyt's final season with George Bignotti. 1966 would not be a good year for Foyt. At Indianapolis, he crashed his primary car in practice and was forced to qualify his backup car on the second day in 18th place. In the race, a major crash collected Foyt on the first lap, resulting in a 26th place finish. Foyt's season got even worse when he was practicing for the Rex Mays Classic the following week. He would crash and would suffer burns, causing him to miss 4 races. In all, Foyt failed to win a race for the first time since 1959 and finished 13th in points. Foyt would make up for 1966 with how 1967 went. In Indianapolis, Parnelli Jones was entered in Andy Granatelli's Turbine car. Jones was the easy favorite and led for 171 laps. However, his car failed with 3 laps to go, with Foyt running second, but victory was not quite assured yet for Foyt.
A 4-car crack-up creates havoc.
The win tied Foyt for the most wins with Louis Meyer, Wilbur Shaw, and Murray Rose. Less than 2 weeks later, Foyt co-drove with Dan Gurney at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in a Ford GT40 Mark IV. Between the two of them, they led all but 90 minutes of the race and won by 4 laps. Back in the National Championship, Foyt won a further 4 races and would win the championship after battling with Mario Andretti and Gordon Johncock. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Foyt began to drive stock cars more often and to great success. In 1968, Foyt won the USAC Stock Car Championship for the first time. Foyt also continued to have success in NASCAR. At the 1971 Daytona 500, Foyt qualified on the pole position and was leading with 38 laps to go when he ran out of fuel, resulting in a 3rd place finish. Foyt returned with a vengeance the following year and won after leading for 167 laps. He became the second driver after Mario Andretti to win both the Indianapolis 500 and the Daytona 500.
Flag is up for A.J. Foyt, and he has been out in front, running easy by himself for 119 consecutive laps. So he has really dominated this race since Richard Petty blew his engine and went to the garage.
The clocks say that he's going to win at better than 160 miles an hour, Keith. He'll be the first over 160 mile an hour winner at 161.5 miles an hour going in. The old record set by Leroy Yarborough, 157.95 in 1969.
So this massive crowd, and they've estimated it at 98,000 plus, coming up with the cheers for the tough Texan from Houston, A.J. Foyt. He told us before the race he wanted to run it hard, lead all the way if he could, and he hasn't led all the way, but most of the way, and he wins the Daytona 500, and that's an appropriate sign, isn't it?
Later that year, Foyt won the USAC Dirt Car Championship. However, the year was not without its issues, as Foyt was burned again at the DuQuoin 100 dirt car race, causing him to miss 4 IndyCar races in a season where he finished 36th in points. In the 10 years after winning in 1967, Foyt finished no better than 3rd in the Indianapolis 500. He remained successful in other races and won the 1975 National Championship. During that time, he qualified on the pole position at Indianapolis 3 times and nearly won several times, the most notable example being in 1976. That year, Foyt was gaining on leader Johnny Rutherford when rain stopped the race after 102 laps. The rain eventually stopped, and it appeared that the race would be restarted. During this time, Foyt's team made improvements to his car. However, rain came a second time, and the race was stopped permanently. In 1977, Foyt started off the season with a win at the Datsun Twin 200 at Ontario Motor Speedway. At Indianapolis, he would qualify in 4th place. In the race, Foyt found himself chasing Gordon Johncock. The race quickly became a race of attrition, as there were only 17 cars still running by the halfway point of the race. As the race went on, it appeared that Johncock had a certain victory. Then suddenly, he began to slow down due to a broken crankshaft as he began lap 185. Foyt went unchallenged over the final 15 laps.
Well, and there's the white flag by Pat Vidan being held out. I'll bet you anything he's driving with more economy than any Scotsman would economise with right now. I bet he's not giving it all he can give it right down that throttle of that great big turbocharged engine that he himself has put together. The man is a constructor, a designer. He seems to run the operation. He seems to be the mechanics. He seems to be everybody else right now. And look at Jim Gilmer and the rest of the team. They're even getting ready for it. And AJ's father on the left of the screen.
Coming down towards turn 3, it's the final lap of the Indianapolis 500. A.J. Foyt is going to make motor racing history. The first man ever to win this great race 4 times. It started in 1911. This is the 61st race, and no one has ever achieved this before. Stand by for the checkered flag. The black and white checkered flag, and in the pits, the red and white checkered shirts of the Gilmore Foyt team. It's all over. A.J. has done it.
Foyt won a record-setting 4th Indianapolis 500 as he went on the traditional victory lap in the pace car. He invited his friend and Indianapolis Motor Speedway owner Tony Holman to come with him. 1977 would be Holman's final 500 as he would die in October that year. Foyt continued to have success in other forms of racing. He won the International Race of Champions Championship in 1976 and 1977, and the USAC Stock Car Championship in 1978 and 1979. In late 1978, a rival series was formed to compete with USAC called CART. After initially deciding to join CART, Foyt decided to remain loyal to USAC, which Holman formed in 1956. Foyt would dominate the national championship that year largely unopposed, winning 5 of 7 races on his way to the championship. At the start of the 1980s, Foyt cut back his racing activities. In 1981, Foyt won what would end up being his final career IndyCar victory, the Van Scoy Diamond Mines 500 at Pocono International Raceway. The race was largely boycotted by kart teams and drivers, and 8 of the 29 starters were from the USAC Silver Crown Series, which used front-engine dirt cars. Just weeks later at the Michigan 500, Foyt was involved in a major crash that broke his arm and nearly caused him to lose it, resulting in a lengthy rehabilitation process. Despite racing less, Foyt still showed his earlier spirit. At the 1982 Indianapolis 500, Foyt qualified 3rd. However, at the start, second-place starter Kevin Cogan lost control and hit Foyt. Foyt's car was not damaged severely, but he did make his displeasure of Cogan known.
That was just a stupid deal. The guy had his head up his that's all.
Once the race was actually started, Foyt went on to lead 32 laps. However, he retired after completing 95 laps due to a transmission failure. He did try to repair the car himself, but he was unsuccessful. 1983 started off well enough for Foyt when he won the 24 Hours of Daytona. However, his father Tony died later that year. This caused Foyt to reduce his workload, with his only IndyCar race being the Indianapolis 500, where he finished 32nd after being a relative non-factor. Foyt gradually returned to racing more as the decade continued. He would win the 24 Hours of Daytona and the 12 Hours of Sebring in 1985. These would be the final races that Foyt would win in his career. In 1990, Foyt's career, and more importantly, his ability to walk, nearly came to an end when he was competing at the Texaco Javelin 200 at Road America. His brakes failed on lap 26, and he drove through an embankment and into a ravine. The crash severely damaged both of Foyt's legs. However, Foyt did not want his career to end on that note. He went through a lengthy rehabilitation process, and to the surprise of many people, he was able to compete in the Indianapolis 500 the following year for the 34th consecutive year. He would qualify for the race in 2nd place, but in the race itself, his car was hit by debris from a crash between Kevin Cogan and Roberto Guerrero, resulting in a 28th place finish. Foyt would come back for a 35th 500 in 1992. In a race that was run in cooler temperatures that resulted in 7 crashes, he kept it off the wall and finished in 9th place. In 1993, Robby Gordon was hired to become Foyt's driver for the full season, but Foyt decided to enter Indianapolis. He seemed set to qualify for his 36th 500 at the age of 58, no less. However, he made a surprise announcement.
It's a hard decision, but it comes a time. I don't know.
He said, it's a hard decision, but there comes a time.
The fans have brought me back as many years I've been back, but I felt like if I'm going to run a team, I can't be in a race car. Seems like every time I'm not with the car, something happens, and I realized that this morning. Just as I went to get the green, the yellow come out, it was my other car, so if I'm going to be a successful car owner, I've got to spend 110% of my time with the car and not think of AJ. So, Mr. Bannon and Ford Motor Company, this decision was made about, well, when Robby hit the wall was when I made the decision. I intended to qualify, and the car's a very fast car I got out of. I know it'll make the race very easy. I'd have no problem putting it in the show, and I think, like I said, it comes a time. I love all y'all a lot. You've been great fans. I love you, and I'll still be back, and we'll still be up in the winner's circle. Thank you very much.
Earlier in the day, Gordon crashed in practice, and Foyt realized that he could not be a successful team owner while still being a driver. Despite this, Foyt would not completely call it a career. In 1994, the NASCAR Cup Series began to have an event in Indianapolis called the Brickyard 400. Foyt qualified for the race in 40th place out of 43 cars. However, he ran out of fuel at one point and finished 30th, 4 laps down. He returned to the race each year through 1997, but he failed to qualify in each year he returned. For the second time within 20 years, a split in IndyCar racing occurred. Tony George, Tony Holman's grandson and the chairman of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, announced the creation of the Indy Racing League to compete with CART. Foyt initially wanted to compete in both series, but he was told by CART to choose one or the other, so Foyt stayed with the Holman-George family in the IRL. In the IRL's first season in 1996, Foyt's driver Scott Sharp tied for the championship with Buzz Calkins. For the series following season, which actually began in 1996, Sharp gave the Foyt team their first IndyCar win since Foyt won at Pocono in 1981. Also that year, Foyt competed in his final race in any type of car in any type of series. The race was the CarQuest 420 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, which was part of the NASCAR Truck Series. Foyt started 32nd out of 40 trucks and finished 28th, 21 laps down. Foyt's team continued to have success in the IRL, with Kenny Breck winning the championship in 1998 and the Indianapolis 500 in 1999. However, with IndyCar racing being split between two series with no end in sight, both series declined in popularity to NASCAR in the United States. Foyt would jump on this trend in 2000 when he returned to NASCAR competition. However, the team would struggle with several different drivers through 2004. In this decade, various team owners from CART, such as most notably Roger Penske, Chip Ganassi, and Michael Andretti, began to compete in the IRL. With a new environment that saw their teams and several others spending more and more, Foyt's team began to struggle. Around this time, Foyt's adopted son, Larry Foyt, and his grandson, AJ Foyt IV, began to drive for the family team in NASCAR and IndyCar respectively. Foyt IV managed to win the IndyCar Development Series Indy Lights Championship in 2002. However, he failed to finish better than ninth in his 3 years with the family team in the IRL. He would eventually leave to go to NASCAR in 2006 before eventually returning to IndyCar the following year and eventually even returning to his grandfather's team. Larry struggled to qualify for NASCAR Cup Series races, and he failed to finish better than 16th place at the 2003 Ford 400 at Homestead Miami Speedway. He would stay in NASCAR through 2009, and along the way he started the Indianapolis 500 between 2004 and 2006, finishing no better than 30th. The 2010s would not start off much better. During qualifying for the 500, Foyt IV, who returned to the family team in 2009 for 2 races, was at odds with his grandfather and suddenly announced his retirement from racing. The two would, however, eventually reconcile. In 2013, Larry Foyt would take a more active leadership role in the team, and this led to the team getting their first IndyCar win since 2002 when Takuma Sato won the Toyota Grand Prix of Long Beach. While the team has not won a race since then, they were able to run towards the front of the field more often in the hands of Sato. However, prior to the 2017 season, Foyt's team switched engines from Honda to Chevrolet. As a result, the Japanese Sato moved to Andretti Autosport, a Honda team, where he ended up winning the Indianapolis 500. Currently, Foyt's team fields cars full-time for Connor Daly and Carlos Munoz, along with an extra car for Zach Veach at Indianapolis. The transition to Chevrolet has not been the easiest, but if there is one thing Foyt has shown in his over 60-year racing career, it's that he can always make a comeback. AJ Foyt wouldn't be the same without auto racing, and auto racing wouldn't be the same without AJ Foyt. During their relationship together, Foyt has experienced some of the highest of highs, but also some of the lowest of lows.